Okay.
This is an interview with Harry J. Moran, Hampton Inn, Newburgh, New York, the 7th of October, 2003, approximately 9 a.m. The interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Harry Joseph Moran. I was born in South Ozone Park, New York, which is an outskirt of the Flatbush area in Brooklyn. What was that other question you asked?
Your year of date of birth.
September 28, 1922.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
High school.
Okay. Do you know where you were and your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I know exactly where I was. My brother John and my sister-in-law went to the theater, Sunday movie. We used to go to the movies on Sunday. It was the RKO Kenmore Theater in Brooklyn, New York. And when we came out, we heard a lot of hustle and bustle going on and people crowding around taxi cabs. And we went over and asked the driver what was going on. He says, "We just got word that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor." And I says, "What else?" He says, "We don't know anything else right now." So we talked with him a few minutes, and then we chatted about that on the way home.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you remember your reaction among the three of you at all? Or?
Surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't know anything else yet. You didn't know what kind of damage may have been done or if it was real.
Mm-hmm.
There was no way of knowing at that time when the first announcements came over as to whether it was just a story that had been fabricated or whether it was a fact.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Why did you select the Army Air Corps?
Well, the strangest thing about that was this. When I enlisted, I was enlisted in the ERC, which was the Enlisted Reserve Corps at the time. I was initially going to a school upstate northern New York, up near Malone, New York. It was called Paul Smith's, which is a college up there. I didn't make it in the course because I didn't have the background for radio repair. So I was reassigned and had to go on what they called active duty, which is in February of 1943.
Mm-hmm.
And when I enlisted, I went to Camp Edison in Seagirt, New Jersey. Okay. And from there I went into training in the Signal Corps, at which time I was trained for being what they called a message deliverer. Should there be a battle going on and you had to deliver a message about something from the command post to someone else, I was supposed to, as others were, to get that message delivered with whatever vehicle or you could, whatever you could find to ride. We were trained to ride motorcycles, cars, trucks, a cow if you had to, and anything that could ride, you were supposed to be able to get on to deliver that message. That was the initial take on that. After I went through basic training, I believe my memory is at this time may not be quite accurate. I was reassigned to Fort George D. Meade in Maryland, at which time I was continued into a service unit. I'm not sure of the number, but it was a signal service unit at the time. And right after basic training, I got up one morning and I couldn't get out of bed. I don't know if you want me to continue with that particular thing. I don't know what was wrong with me, but I could not get up to move out of bed. After trying to get up, and I mean physically, I could not stand up and get up onto my feet. I called for assistance, and I believe the barracks person in charge of the barracks orderly, came in and said to me, "What's the matter?" I says, "I can't get up." So he called some people and they got me up out of bed, but it was a very slow process. It took me time to get up to be able to stand on my feet because my legs were all stiffened up. Once I got out, I was able to move, and as you started to walk, you were able to manipulate a little bit further. So they drove me over to the what is
Aid station or
the aid
medics?
station, yeah, first aid, and I went in there and they said they didn't know what to do, so they decided to send me into the hospital, which was at Fort George G. Meade, Maryland at the time. I entered the hospital, and I spent some 4 months of time in the hospital as a bed patient because I couldn't move. And during the course of time, they took all kinds of tests and everything, and going back then, as I know today, they determined that I had an arthritic condition, which they called at that time rheumatoid arthritis. I never knew about it or heard about it or anything like that. And they treated me, they gave me whirlpool baths as best they could, and I come to find in recent years that they didn't know very much at all about arthritis, and to this day it's still an incurable ailment. I was reassigned at that point in time to what they called inactive duty for going overseas. They had it on my record because of my condition and not being able to move too well. They didn't want me to go overseas, and it says that on some of the paperwork that I've got. After a period of time, I was able to move around a little bit better, and pretty soon I was able to do almost normal types of activities, but was not allowed to stand formation, to do any marching or anything along those lines. So I was assigned to the 1322nd Service Unit in Fort Meade, Maryland, under the command of Captain Norman Lucy, who was from Long Island. And he assigned me as the company driver. That meant that whenever he needed to go anywhere or was on Officer of the Day, I was his driver. As time went on, they brought in some prisoners of war, German prisoners of war, to Fort Meade, Maryland. They may have also had some Italians, but they were kept segregated. But I remember the Germans well, because they assigned them as kitchen people to work in the kitchen instead of having the GIs do the kitchen police, KP. And I had to go pick them up with a guard. There was a guard that carried a pistol and a billy club, and he would sit in the front seat with me and put them in the back of the truck. And then we'd drive to the barracks, and I dropped them off. Then I went back to my base and got back to my car driving duties with the Captain Usi, whenever he may be needed, or Sergeant Rush, who was the first sergeant of the company. I was in the hospital for quite a while, and after a period of time, when I was told I couldn't go on overseas, I requested overseas duty, and I was told I couldn't because the record there, and I said, well, I would like to go no matter what. So they told me to fill out a form requesting overseas duty and to see if it would be approved. Sometime later it was approved, and the circumstances of how it arrived at that decision I don't really know. But I was sent on a train trip and ended up at what they call Jackson Barracks in Louisiana. And we got down there in the afternoon, and that same afternoon we got on a boat, and we were not told where we were going, but we all got aboard ship, and were told that we have to be very careful because we were going out onto the open water, and there was always a possibility of submarines going along. As it ended up, we went along through the Caribbean down to the Panama Canal. And I don't know how many days it took, but we arrived at the Panama Canal, and however we got there, I don't remember getting off the boat, but we get on a train and went all the way to the Atlantic side of the canal at Fort Randolph, which was down the end of the line on the train tracks. We went through various military and naval installations there, one of which was Solo. Then there was France Field, where I ended up in the Air Corps, and Fort Randolph, which was a staging area that when you got there, everybody went to Fort Randolph, and then they were assigned to various places. Some were shipped across the canal to the Balboa side, or the Pacific side, and some were assigned to the Air Corps, which I was assigned to as a security person. Because of not being able to do any work, they allowed me to drive around the airfield any hour of the day that I was on duty and patrol the airfield to make sure that there was nothing going on that would create a problem. And that was basically what it was. I did that for quite a period of time. That service lasted not too very many months. I don't remember the time I went down here, but I was down here some 6 to 8 months. Don't remember the exact number. And as time progressed, you didn't hear too much about the war. Now the war was advancing all the time in Europe, and finally we found out that there was a surrender in Europe, and they were still fighting in the Pacific. And
Do you remember the reaction when?
oh, everybody was happy as hell. Yeah, we had everybody was given time to relax and enjoy, and there was beer flowed like wine, and they treated you very well, and everybody was happy and jumping around and hoping that the other war would end this very soon, which it actually did. Then I went back to Fort Randolph again, and from there I was reassigned to come back to the States, where I went to Fort Dixon, New Jersey, for discharge in '46. That's a quick snapshot of the service time that I had. But there were 3 of us in the Army, by the way. My brothers, John and Robert, and myself were in. The reason I enlisted was I couldn't get into it. They weren't calling me. So I went to the draft board at the time, and I told them I wanted to go to get enlisted, and they allowed me to do that. And that's when I signed up for the ERC and ended up in the Signal Corps.
Where'd your brother serve?
My brother Bob served. He was in the glider outfit down in South or North Carolina, and the very strange story about that was one day when I was putting my vehicle away in the garage across the road of the railroad tracks. You're supposed to clean your vehicle every day and fill it up with gas so that you're ready to go the next day. When I come out, there was a train going by. And I walked out because I couldn't go across until the train cleared. And I see a lot of guys in the train hanging their heads out the window looking around, and who do I see but my brother? He ended up in Panama on the Pacific side of the ocean, in Balboa. And I thought that was very strange that I would see him.
Yes.
So I told him where. I yelled and ran along the train and told him that I was at France Field, and to call up and they would get a hold of me, because it was not a very big place. My brother John served over in Europe as a radio repairman in the 8th Air Force. And he was there until the war ended, when he got out. We all got out within months of each other in 1946.
Are they both still alive?
My brother John died about 10 years ago. My brother Bob is still alive and lives in Jersey. They couldn't, John died before this program came in, and I'm sure he would have done it if he could. My brother Bob, I told him if he wrote to them, he could tell them that he was a New Yorker, but I don't know that he ever did or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we've heard from him. Do you remember where you were, and probably, I imagine, in the Canal Zone, when you heard about the death of President Roosevelt and your reaction? Do you recall that? No?
No, I don't.
Okay. How about when you heard about the dropping the atomic bombs?
Well, there was a big, I don't know the time that happened, but I know it was towards the end of the war, because that's what ended up with the Japanese surrender. We didn't know anything about an atomic bomb, and we weren't privy to information, and we were never told anything about what was happening or whether there was any, we come to know where they were working on it later on. But the reaction was, it must have been a hell of a bomb when they said that it blew up and thousands of people were killed in it. And everybody was glad when the second bomb was dropped, when Japan decided it was time to stop the war and surrender. But everybody jumped around. It was an amazing day. It was similar to what we heard when the first war ended. Everybody was happy to go. I guess it would be.
Yes. Did you ever get to see any USO shows at all?
No. Bob Hope never made it to where we were. He was all over the world. We had people come in to entertain us, but there were people I never saw before, and as it was a small base that we were on, and they'd come in, do their little song and dance, and everybody clapped and applauded. And the one thing that I remember very clearly was one time we were surprised. Hap Arnold was in the Air Force. He came to our camp one time, and we were all spitting polish to go into the theater to hear him talk, and everybody was amazed to see this man when he was standing up on the stage of this theater, when we were all sitting in there talking, and nobody made a sound when he was there. And don't ask me what he talked about at the time. I couldn't remember the words, but I'm sure it was "you're doing a great job" type of thing. That was the only person I know of that I actually saw that was of any, that I know to this day, who was quite a big person in the Air Corps.
Did you make use of the GI Bill?
No, never did.
How about the 5220 Club?
Yes, I did make use of that, because when I first got out, there was very little work at the time, and used to take a long walk, because you saved the car fare of the trolley cars at the time that had it from Church Avenue and Nostrand Avenue in Brooklyn all the way down to Utica Avenue. On the second floor, there was an office there, and you went in and you signed for the 5220. I was given a number about the amount of money I got. I think it was in the neighborhood of $300 and some odd dollars that I got. $20 was a lot of money to get for nothing, and I got a job in a small thread making plant in Brooklyn, so I was making more money per week by working here, something like $30 a week. So wanting an extra dollar, I gave up the 52. Once you go to work, you couldn't collect the 5220. So I did. Yes, I did take advantage of that one.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
Yes. I joined the VFW. I can't tell you exactly when, but I joined that outfit quite a ways back. I've kept up with it, and because of being in one outfit, I felt kind of funny about joining two, and how do you put your efforts to one or the other. And until recent times, which is only a year ago, my nephew, who has a lot to do with the American Legion down in North Carolina, told me he wanted my permission to sign up in his what do you call it?
His post.
His post. Yeah, couldn't think of the word. He wanted to sign me up and my brother, Bob, because they were looking to get more people in, and he says, I'll pay the first year's fee, which he did for both of us. He says, but when you get the bill for it later on, you continue on. So I joined the American Legion at that point in time.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that was in the service with you?
No, you know, I often, even the fella that, a buddy of mine by the name of Mike DeMeo, who lived in Brooklyn, we both signed up together. When I mentioned going to the draft board, so did he. We decided we wanted to sign up and get going. You don't know what you're going to get into, but you wanted to get in, and we weren't doing anything. There was no work available. And I went down with Mike, and we both signed up, and we both ended up in the same place. He stayed on, and he also didn't complete the course sometime after me. And then I lost track of them until we got out of the service. And at that point in time, he's the only one who I went into the Army with, but not in any particular base or any company that we were together in, just that we were in service together. And but I wanted to, but for some reason or another, when you get discharged and you go home and you know this guy lives in New Jersey, and this guy lives in Brooklyn, and this guy lives in the Bronx or wherever, Pennsylvania, for some reason or another, you're so anxious to get out after being in for 3 years, or a little over 3, that you don't think too much about that. You want to think about what you are going to do. So I never did keep. And
Has your arthritis bothered you?
Oh yes, to this day. Yep. What actually happened was when I was getting out of the service, we landed at a pier in Brooklyn, and we got off the boat, and we were on the dock getting lined up to go to Fort Dix. They had coffee and donuts for us, and good things like that. And the Red Cross was going around asking if you needed anything or if you wanted anything. And I told them no, I said, and they asked me, I don't know how the question came up, but they asked me something about my health, and when I mentioned the fact that I had been in the hospital with arthritis in Fort Meade, Maryland for some 4 months, they said to me, you know what? If you're smart, you'll apply for a disability pension based upon a service disability that you got in the service. And I did that. And I don't remember exactly what paperwork I filled out, but sometime early in 46, shortly afterward, I received a letter from them telling me that they rejected my claim because I had arthritis before I went in the service. And I've come to find out in years past, in years to come up, including today, that that was not true. I was never sick a day in my life until I went into the service. And that's when at that point in time, when I was doing those things, I didn't know where to go. And I joined the Veterans Organization, and I went up to Monticello one time, and I spoke to a fellow who was a Veterans Agency guy, and he told me you should reopen that claim. And he says, wouldn't it be nice to get $200 a month for the rest of your life? Well, Al Atkin was a BS artist. He was a nice guy, but he used to like to say, you're going to get this, you're going to get that. And all of these years, believe it or not, would you believe that that file is still open? That they never, ever acknowledged anything. And I have medical records that clearly show that they said things that were not true. In other words, on one of my, in my discharge physical, you get a physical when you're getting discharged, they said there is no record of anything in the discharge showing any mention of the word arthritis. And I got a copy of those records home, and it clearly shows that I was in the hospital for 4 months, and it says the words chronic arthritis. And down below, it says something to the effect, in your opinion, was this in the line of duty? And it's signed by an officer. I forget his name, I'll get the paperwork home. He said yes, that it was line of duty. So if you've ever dealt with the VA in regard to something along those lines, and I'm talking specifically about the New York office because I spoke to a veteran who was in another guy in the Veterans Service Agency in Monticello, and he said New York ranks low in accuracy and high in rejections of claims. And I'm still going around about that.
Could you hold this up in front of you and tell us when and where that photograph was taken?
It was in the fall of 1943. I believe this was taken after I got out of the service, out of the hospital, when I was able to move around at Fort George D. Meade in Maryland. The reason I say fall is I remember the time, and if you look at the trees, you'll see that they down. So that was the time that was taken.
Okay, thank you. How do you think your time in the service had an effect on your life? Or do you?
Believe it or not, over the years, arthritis is a very strange thing. There are times that I had many years where I had absolutely no problem. And arthritis is a very strange thing, and they still don't know that very much about it as far as it goes, and it's still considered incurable. I was able to do things that I didn't think I would be able to do, because when you're feeling good, you're able to move around, do odds and ends, go to work and stuff like that. I was able to work. After I got out of the service and went to work in the at this place that made sewing thread, I went to work for my father-in-law as an attendant at his gas station. Not liking the job there, this was by this time I had been married, this was after 57. I decided one day I couldn't work there anymore. So I went over to a fellow that I had come to know from another fellow who worked at IBM in East Fishkill and applied for a job. The fellow's name was George Phillips. And he told me after we talked a little bit, he says, I like the way you talk. He says, I think we might have something for you in the very near future. And about maybe a little less than a month later, he called me up Sunday. He says, I have an offer for you. I want you to go to work in the assembly line in East Fishkill at, I forget the amount of money that it wasn't a lot at the time. If you got $2 an hour, you got a lot of money at IBM at that time. So I went to work there and I spent some 20 years at IBM. And in 1987 they came up with they were looking to reduce their staffs. They wanted to get people out. So they come up with an incentive where they added 5 years to your service time. So I was there 20 years from 67 to 87. And I got 25 years of that, which made a big difference in your pension at the time. So I retired in 87. And from that point until to this day, I would do work periodically in easy jobs that weren't physically taxing because I'm getting older now. And you don't move around when you get old as well as you did when you were young. So I used to go to work up in Kingston for an outfit that does the state taxes for the state of New York. It's called Fleet Enterprises. And all you do is open envelopes and sort out the tax forms that they have. I do that. I've done that for 5 years. I didn't do it this year because during the course of the time, from the time of 1992, I came down with colon cancer. And just here this past year, in December of 2002, I came down with prostate cancer. So in my lifetime, I've gone through 2 bouts of cancer, both of which, thank God, and I mean it sincerely, that I came out completely cured of both cancers. And my doctor recently said to me, he says, you don't know how lucky you are. He says, you come out of colon cancer, you went through chemotherapy for 52 weeks, you come out of that, and the doctor said to me, I don't know how to tell you this, but we've got to consider you cured. And recently, when I had the prostate cancer, that involves hormone treatment, radiation treatment, and what you hear of seed implants. Well, I had that. And the doctor told me the same thing one day, Harry, you're cured. And I said, you know, doctor, I understand that you can only control prostate cancer. He says, I'm telling you, Harry, you're cured. So I think I'm a very lucky person that I can go through 2 major cancer treatments and come out of it. Except for age, I have more problems with the arthritis today than I ever had with any other problems with the cancer, believe it or not. And that's about my medical history is pretty good when you come out of two doses of that stuff.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.